Hey, welcome back. I'm Dr. Lon Schiffbauer, and this is the fundamentals of interpersonal communication. Today, we are talking about the art and science of persuasion, ultimately, the purpose of interpersonal communication. The purpose of interpersonal communication is to influence the attitudes, feelings, beliefs, and actions of others and ourselves for a desired outcome. In other words, we communicate so we can work together for our mutual benefit. Now, I need to be clear about something. We are not talking about manipulating others. We are talking about influencing others. So let's make sure we understand the distinction. In many ways, it all comes down to the intent and means of our communications. So first, the intent. The intent of influencing is to guide, inspire, or persuade someone toward an idea, choice, or behavior for a clear and understood mutual benefit. We're talking full transparency here. By contrast, manipulation aims to control or steer someone's actions for one's own personal gain, often at the expense of the other person. So that's the intent behind the communication. Then there are the means by which we communicate. The means of influence are transparent and open, using reason, evidence, and genuine passion in an authentic dialogue, including elements of genuine trust and vulnerability. Manipulation, on the other hand, relies on hidden or deceptive tactics, projecting guilt, fear, or flattery, often withholding information that could possibly benefit the other but not yourself, turning the exchange into, a monologue rather than a dialogue. Now, to be clear, the ideas and principles we're going to talk about today, and in fact, all throughout the series, can be applied equally to good faith influencing and maliciously intended manipulation. But you're not going to use these principles in that way, right? You're like an intelligent, genuine human being who treasures their place in a nurturing society. So we're not going to talk about this again. You're going to use these powers for good. As Benjamin Franklin once said, trickery and treachery are the practices of fools that have not the wits enough to be honest. All right, with all that sorted, let's go ahead and move on. Purpose comes before communication. One thing about communication is that we're always communicating. If we are in a space, in a room with another person, we're communicating, whether we realize it or not. Even when you're sitting quietly in a room, if there's someone else in the room, you're communicating. And when we're communicating, which is always, there's always a purpose, a driver that determines what and how we are communicating. However, just because we always have a purpose when communicating, this doesn't mean that we always have a clear understanding of what this purpose may actually be, why we're communicating. Let me show you what I mean. Functional purposes of communication. First, there are what we might call the functional purposes behind our communication. By functional purposes, I mean the overarching objective behind our communication, what we are trying to accomplish at the highest level. The first is instructional and informative communication. This is the basic sharing and disseminating of information, what we might consider instructional and informative communication. We all want to get the right stuff done at the right time and in the right way for the right reasons. All of this requires instructional and informative communication. Next, we have relational communication. We're a community species and need one another to survive and thrive in this world. So we're always communicating as, something of a social lubricant, ensuring our place in the collective, whether that collective be organizational, romantic, filial, fraternal, or what have you. Then there's identity management communication. We all want to present ourselves in the best possible light, a way that encourages a certain perception among others. In other words, we want to be perceived as smart, competent, charming, good-looking, funny, and just about any other quality that, I clearly exude, right? This means that we use communication not just to inspire this perception, but to sort of gauge and assess how we're being perceived and treated. Finally, there's expressive or aesthetic communication. This is related to identity management and relational communication, but with its own distinct flavor. Communication can be used to evoke emotion, provoke thought, or create an experience through the arts, such as the visual arts, music, film, or just about any of the other creative mediums. This is all part of interpersonal communication. Transparency and awareness. Okay, so we have our 4 types of functional communication, but then the question becomes, to what degree are we transparent about our purpose? Or are we even aware of the purpose in the first place? So here, check this out. The explicit or overt purpose of the communication. The first level is the most conscious and explicit purpose. It's the purpose which we are completely aware of and share freely and transparently with others. Right now, for example, my explicit purpose is to explain, demonstrate, and educate you on the principles of interpersonal communication. When I'm with my wife, my explicit purpose is to connect, express affection, and strengthen our relationship. All classic relational communication. Comedians want to entertain, leaders want to inspire, and coaches want to improve team performance. None of this is a secret. It's all an explicit purpose. The implicit or covert purpose of the communication. Thing is, not all purposes are shared in such a transparent manner. An implicit or covert purpose is, well, kept close to the chest. You're completely aware of the purpose, but you're not so keen on openly expressing it to others. For example, as an educator, I want to come across to my students as smart and insightful. Identity management, right? Now, I'm not ashamed of this, but it's not something I'd normally openly express. I have no problem telling my students by the end of the lecture that they'll have a firm understanding of the topic, instructional and formative communication, but I'm not going to follow this up with, and by the end of the day, you're going to think I'm amazing and brilliant, even though I want them to think I'm amazing and brilliant. In the same way, my students work hard to come across as engaged and attentive. Relational communication. They take notes, maintain eye contact, and nod at the appropriate times. And the smart ones laugh at my jokes. They do this in an attempt to endear themselves to me and get those sweet, sweet participation points. They wouldn't say this out loud, but this is their implicit or covert purpose. The inadvertent purpose of the communication. Finally, there's the third level, that murky level in which we even ourselves are unaware of the purpose behind our communication. In this level, we are inadvertently communicating things that, well, we're unaware of. I see this in the bored, detached expressions on my students' faces. I see this in their AI-generated submissions. Without realizing it, my students are telling me that they have no interest in the topic, find my lectures uninspiring, and would rather be doing just about anything else short of a root canal at that time. And even the root canal is kind of a 50-50 split. When I'm with my leadership, God only knows what I'm communicating. Admiration, disdain, eagerness, incredulity. It's the whole RBF thing, right? We just don't realize what we're communicating or that we're communicating anything at all. So yeah, that's the thing about this level. The purpose behind the communication is hidden even to ourselves, but trust me, your audience sees it. Affect and be affected. At the top of this video, I said that the purpose of interpersonal communication is to influence the attitudes, feelings, beliefs, and actions of others and ourselves for a desired outcome. And ourselves. We're not just influencing others, we're influencing ourselves. For example, as a professor, I want to affect the attitudes, feelings, and behaviors of my students. And I do this by explaining and demonstrating the skills that well, if they learn, will help them reach their goals. However, I also want to be influenced by my students. I observe their reactions and their engagement in the material and adjust my lecture as needed. They're literally informing me on how best to do my job. And I want this. I want to know how my instruction is landing, and they are telling me. They are influencing me. Now, on the student side, they obviously want to affect the attitudes and behaviors and feelings of me, the professor. For no other reason, they want to persuade me to give them the points. They do this by asking questions, applying the principles, and doing the assignments. But students also want to be influenced by the professor. Hell, they're paying me to influence them. They want the professor to teach them the skills and guide them as they apply them to life and business problems in the real world. Each side has specific goals in how they want to influence and be influenced, but it is an exchange. It is a dialogue. Inspiring action. With these high-level principles in place, let's now shift over to the actual practices of persuasion. By this, I mean, what can you specifically do to influence somebody's attitudes, feelings, behaviors, actions, all that good stuff? Here are some proven practices of persuasion. Reciprocity. Give first if you want to receive. People will be far more inclined to help you get what you need if you first help them get what they need. Kindness begets kindness. If you give people evidence that you're there for them and are willing to commit your time, attention, and expertise toward helping them, they're going to be far more willing to, give you the same of theirs. Did that make sense? I don't know. You get what I'm saying. Commitment and consistency. Don't ask for what they can't give. Don't ask people to act in a way that is counter to who or what they are or the commitments that they've made to others and themselves. Once a person has committed to something, they prefer to act in a way that is consistent with that commitment. The more you ask someone to run counter to who they are, the more you're starting to stray into the realm of manipulation. And we don't manipulate. We don't do that. Social proof. Exemplify the behavior you want to engender in others. People look to the behavior of others to decide what's correct and appropriate. As Mahatma Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world. If you want people to be team players, be a team player. If you want patience and empathy, show patience and empathy. Your actions and behaviors set the tone for those around you. So be the kind of person that you would want to hang out with. Relationships. Be likable. This may sound painfully obvious, I get it, but we are more apt to help people we like than those whom we don't. This means that relationships matter. Relationships built on trust, commitment, and cooperation. Be a contributing and supporting member of a group, preferably many groups, that way you can have more influence. This is the key to leveraging genuine relationships. Authority. Know what you're talking about. People tend to be persuaded by credible experts and authority figures. This is why outwardly visible vestitures of authority, such as, titles, uniforms, and letters after someone's name, they hold value on our society. You can also borrow authority, as it were, by having others of higher authority in your network of friends and acquaintances. For example, tell me that you can introduce me to Keanu Reeves, Tom Cruise, or Hank Green, and I'm your bitch. The idea is that if people of such social standing consider you part of their circle, then you must have some serious mojo about you. Seriously, do you know any of these folks? I can totally be available. Scarcity. Make yourself desirable and scarce. Sometimes if you want someone to do something, it helps to give them a very narrow window in which to do it. I know this sounds weird, but think about the principle of relationships. In an authentic relationship, we want to help one another. By adding an element of scarcity to the opportunity, you increase the person's desire to act. Not long ago, my wife's cousin contacted us out of the blue and said, "Hey, we're in town for the next 2 days. Want to get together?" And I'm like, "Hell yeah, I want to get together." She and her husband are like totally class acts, and we're lucky to see them once a decade. So we cleared our calendar, not an easy thing to do, and had a blast. On the other hand, we're forever telling local friends and family that we should get together for dinner sometime. And we never do. Simply put, the fear of missing out creates an urgency and a desire for the person to take action. With them, what's in it for me? So I have some hard truth for you. Most people aren't concerned in the least about what you need. They're concerned about what they need. The better you can frame your communication in context of what they need, not what you need, the more likely they are to support your goals. After all, in helping you, they're helping themselves. So yeah, win-win. So there you go. Practice these practices, and you too can develop your influence and persuasion skills. All right, that's all I have for today. Now, go off and make some trouble, and we'll talk again soon. What we might call the functional purposes behind... For example, as a professor, I want to affect the attitudes, feelings, and beliefs... That's all, folks.